Welcome to the Four Fires Podcast, where we talk about winning in all four of the essential areas of life.
Welcome back to the Four Fires Podcast. Alan and I are back in the studio, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that helps us in both the people fire and the professional fire. So we're going to be talking about a tool that we use called the DISC. It's a personality profile test, and we're going to be talking about how it helps us in our people relationships, both at home and at work. So, Alan, why don't you give us a good but somewhat brief explanation of the DISC so that people can have an understanding of what it is.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different tools out there that help people measure personalities. I mean, you've got the Enneagram, you got the Myers-Briggs, HTMI. I mean, there's a plethora of them. The DISC is a tool that I really, really like because, one, it's simple to understand at a high level, but it also goes very, very deep. The DISC is a tool that generally helps break personality types into four basic categories. High level, those four categories are D, the dominance personality type, I, influencer personality type, S, steadiness personality type, and C, the compliance personality type. The DISC is a tool that you can use to help understand what motivates someone, what their fears are, and how understanding how they're wired impacts how you should lead them. All right, so let me give you a little overview of what the DISC is just at a high level. There are four basic personality types. So imagine that you have a quadrant, and in the top half of the quadrant, you have your D's and your C's, right? So your D's and your C's are your task-oriented personality types. In the bottom half of this quadrant, you have your S's and your I's. Those are your more people-oriented personality types. On the right side, you have your D's and your I's. So that's your more outgoing. And then on the left side, you have your C's and your S's. Those are your more reserved personality types. So what that means is that your D, your dominance personality type, is an outgoing, task-oriented person. An I is an outgoing, people-oriented person. An S is a more reserved, people-oriented person. And a C is a more reserved, task-oriented person. So what's unique about this is that each one of these personality types has a primary emotion and a primary fear. And when you understand what somebody's primary emotion is and what their primary fear is, it allows you to lead them a whole lot better. So just a real quick rundown of what those look like. For a D personality type, these people they're directive, they're risk takers, they're quick decision makers, but their primary emotion is anger. And their number one fear is being taken advantage of. They hate the idea of somebody not operating in their best interest, more so than any of the other personality types. Your high I, their primary emotion is optimism, and their primary fear is loss of social recognition. This idea of being out of the tribe. If they do something or somebody says you're out, man, it wounds them at a level that the other personality, like, what? Who cares about other people? Eyes care about other people. Yeah. Your S's are your more reserved, people-oriented people. Their primary emotion, and this is interesting, is no emotion. And we call it non-demonstrative. It doesn't mean that they're not feeling emotion. It just means that you're not going to see it, which is really important for you to understand if you are married to an S. Just because they're not saying it does not mean they're not feeling it. So that's their primary emotion is no emotion. And their primary fear is loss of stability. An S really, it pushes their button when they feel like that they're unstable. And then a C, your more reserved, task-oriented personality profile. Their primary emotion is fear, and their primary fear is making a mistake. They really, really, makes them cringe to think that they did something that was wrong. Whereas high D, fail and fail fast. Let's just go. Like, mistakes are fine. You just build on them. A high C, no, we do not make decisions before we have thoroughly vetted them and gathered all the data. And so each one of these personality profiles has amazing strengths, has amazing roles within organizations. They're super helpful when
they're in the right seat.
Exactly. Yes.
On the bus. Yep.
You know, that kind of goes back to that good to great, you know, like get the right people on the bus and get the right people on the bus in the right seats. The DISC is super helpful for helping to make sure that your people are in the right seats.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard you say is that the DISC helps us know and understand people better. And when we're thinking about at work, it's like, if I know you, I can lead you better. And then at home, if I know you, I can love you better. I can protect you better. It's just a great tool. I've seen it. It's really, really helped me, and specifically my people fire with friends and family, and especially with me and my wife. It's just great to understand, like you said, what motivates us, the best ways to communicate to each other based off of our different personalities. So let's go into talking about how the DISC helps us at work, being able to relate to our teammates or even lead our team that we're responsible for.
Yeah. So we actually use this tool a lot when we're talking about teams and we're talking about businesses that have to function together. And the reason that that's important in a business environment is that there are different types of leadership authority. Think about it this way. There's positional authority. Like, somebody can ask you to do something because they have a title, and they can impose a consequence upon you or give you a reward. We call it the carrot and the stick. You can either whip somebody with the stick or hold this carrot out in front of them, and positional authority will get you so far. But relationships that are based on positional authority are pretty transactional. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. And humans aren't really wired to work hard for or to give of the deepest parts of themselves, to be highly engaged for a transactional style relationship. What the DISC allows us to do is to lead relationally. So there's another kind of authority called relational authority. And think about it. I mean, leadership at its core is just the ability it's just influence. Leadership is the ability to get somebody to do something that they would not have otherwise done. Right? Okay, so if I influenced you, if I changed your direction, then I've led you. And you can lead people through positional authority, and you can lead people through relational authority. Like, you can get people to change and do different things based on those two different types of influence. What the DISC does is it allows us to communicate more effectively, to know the person who's on the other end and the receiving end of this influence that we're trying to get impact them with, and allows us to be more relational in the ways that we lead. So one of the things I've noticed in teams that seem to be a little dysfunctional is that they lack real relationship in the work environment. I mean, I like metaphors, but I kind of think of relationships as the lubricant that keeps the machine running. You know, like, you can have all the gears that they will spin and they will turn, but without some oil on those gears, a lot of friction is going to occur, and ultimately a lot of wear and tear, to the point at which the machine no longer functions because you didn't keep the oil fresh.
Yeah.
The ability to know who's sitting across the table from you and the willingness to do them a favor is part of what keeps the machine that is business functioning well. We use the DISC in a team environment to help people understand two primary things. One, who is it that's sitting across the table from you, and how are they wired? How do they want to be led? But even more importantly, who is it that's sitting in your chair, and what are your primary fears and motivators, and how do you come across to the person who's sitting on the other side of the desk? Some of the best leaders that I know are highly introspective. They have a high level of emotional intelligence and the ability to look into themselves and say, I did this because this is how I'm wired. And once you get that as a leader,
and not just knowing I did this because that's how I'm wired, I can do it better in the future if I do this, rather than just saying, well, that's just how I am, because that's not healthy either.
No.
That's not, I would say that's not emotionally intelligent.
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't manage what you can't measure. You can't control what you're unaware of. Awareness allows us to mitigate, to minimize some of the biggest detriments that we each have in our own leadership style. Some of us are wired to let anger take a larger role in our lives. Some of us are wired to let fear
or like passivity
like
rule over you.
yeah. And if you're aware of that, then you can respond to it. And so, yeah, that's the big thing in business.
Yeah.
It builds relationships, but it also adds a lot of introspection, ability to understand yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get the privilege of being able to attend a lot of our Lead University sessions where we're coaching managers of different businesses that come in, and we're doing management training. And it's cool for me to sit back and I get to watch kind of the light bulb come on for some of our clients when they're like, that's why this guy or this girl at work acts like that or did that. And their response was, I understand now we're wired different, and that doesn't make me bad or them bad. We're just different. As before, when they didn't have the knowledge of the DISC, they were just like, that person is so difficult. They just do everything different than me. And so the DISC was a great tool. I just saw that in like a real life example of a manager saying, oh, I know now what I can do to help that person feel like they're being seen because I'm not. I think the case was that their team player really wanted the data. They were a high C, and he was like, I don't have time to sit there and tell them all the data. But then and so anyway, it was just cool for me to see real life examples of when we're helping people in other real businesses, and their managers are able to relate better to their key employees because of the DISC.
For sure. And a metaphor that we use around this is that personality types are kind of like body types. If you had a guy who was 6'4", 300 pounds on your football team, and you got a guy who's 160 pounds and can run really, really fast, you clearly know that there are different roles for them on your team. There's a spot for both of them. Right, so you got a wide receiver who can run fast and can catch, and you've got an offensive lineman who can be big and can block, and those are both really important roles for a successful football team. Now, if you send them both running around the track and say, hey, run around this track as fast as you can, and your offensive lineman isn't going very fast, are you mad at him because he's lazy? No. It makes sense that he can't go as fast because you understand he has a different body type than the wide receiver. Conversely, if you ask them both to deadlift 400 pounds and your wide receiver is struggling to be able to deadlift that kind of weight, but the offensive lineman doesn't struggle, are you angry or disappointed at the wide receiver? No, because you can see in their body type that they're wired for different work. But you can't see personality type without a tool like this.
Right.
Oftentimes what happens is that you impose a standard upon people at work that is unrealistic for their personality type. For example, a high I, a person who is an influence personality type. They are outgoing, they are gregarious, they are friendly, they're charming. They're usually really good with their words. They're optimistic. But a high I is not organized. They're never going to build their own systems and structures to be organized and put everything into nice little category. That is just not how their brain works. And so to be frustrated with them that they're not doing that kind of work is kind of silly once you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't see that, it's easy
Just to get angry at that person.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You are the most
Why won't
unorganized person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. And so one of the values there and the gifts that I think we can bring a company by using the disc is to help them have those aha moments, like that. Oh, you're good at that. And that's super useful for the people who are already in their company. Now, what happens when a company really grabs a hold of the disc and understands it at the foundation? You start designing job descriptions for specific personality types in the same way that football teams have designed offensive linemen. If a guy who's 150 pounds walks up and interviews and says he wants to be an offensive lineman on your football team, you don't even give him an interview. Like, it's not even a consideration.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you got all the want to in the world, you are not cut out for this work. And we use it as a tool internally to say, oh, this position right here is designed for someone who is strong, a strong S and a strong C. Like, we need them to think in terms of systems and plans. We need them to think about data. We need them to not be overly out there talking all the time. There's some work over here that is an SC work.
But on the other side, you have a sales role you're trying to fill. You don't want somebody who's maybe quiet and just wants to sit at their desk and crunch the numbers. You want that person that's out there that wants to use their words.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so you design job descriptions, job roles to fit different disc profiles. And you can even use it. This is cool. Each profile has an ideal type of work that is attractive to them. The high D loves risk. They want a high risk job that has high rewards. You can write a job description, like when you go post it on a job posting board, that has that role be attractive to the personality type that you want to apply for your job. And so, once you master the disc as a business, it's a super, super useful tool.
I feel like the disc is kind of like the movie National Treasure. They like get the fancy glasses that helps them read the map. That's like, I feel like the disc is like you get the glasses and you're able to see and understand people and read them.
For sure.
Yeah.
We do people work all the time. I mean, executive coaching, management training, what we do is we are people experts. And the disc, is one of my most useful people superpowers. It is the thing that allows me to kind of have X-ray vision into who you are. So much so that I now even use it in the sales process. Because I've lived in the disc world for a while, and I have a pretty good understanding of how people work.
You can read it pretty quick.
There's some tells,
Yeah.
right? So like people who are high I, they tend to talk with their hands. They're highly energetic, they're optimistic, and pretty quickly I can tell if the person sitting across the table from me is a real high I. Well, it turns out that those same people often buy like products based on references. They trust if you can say, "Hey, we've done the same program for ABC company that you know."
It's a relationship thing.
Then they go, "Oh, you did it for ABC? Well, then I'm in."
Yeah.
They care about relationships,
yeah.
and they put so much value in it that's the sales tactic. That's how I get them to move. Versus if I'm sitting across the table from somebody who's a high C, all they care about is the data. Give me the data. You know, it's like, in God we trust, all others bring data. And so I know that if I go in there and I talk about, oh, we did this for Bob and we did this for Joe and ABC company. In fact, they think I'm just over here running my mouth. Give me the data.
They want to see the ROI from.
Show me the ROI for the impact of this work with our organization. And even to the point, a high C will not make a decision we'll get into a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah,
of their fears and their motivations, but a high C does not want to make a mistake. So the question I always ask in a sales engagement for a high C is, hey, do you have all the information that you need to make an intelligent and responsible decision? Because if they can pause and think, yes, I have all the data that I need to be able to make an intelligent and informed, responsible decision, then that frees them up. Then they know they can make a decision. But if you walk out of a sales meeting without having given them the data, you will not get a decision.
So if you're going to be a salesperson and maybe you're a high D, and we say like a high D likes to be quick, be brief, be bright, be gone. So if you're trying to sell to a guy, if you're a high D and you're in there like boom, 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 and you're a high C, and I'm like, all right, are you in or you out? And then you're rushing a high C. Just being able to be emotionally aware and use the tool to try to read your person instead of just saying like, well, what? I'm just in here like doing what I think is necessary. I can see how that would be useful in that type of role.
I mean, I once did a sales deal for it's $100,000 plus deal. We went to lunch that day. We had about a 2-hour conversation. We shook hands on a $100,000 deal. They didn't ask any questions about how we were going to do it. I mean, it was a super high D.
High D, okay.
The
risk and
willing to make a decision quickly. Went with his gut, and he was just going to move quickly. We'll get all the details taken care of later. Other times, it's a long, drawn out sales process, and you can't push. So a tool like this, it's super helpful on the sales side. It's super helpful in the business environment because it teaches you who you're, coming across the table or who's sitting across the table from. But inevitably, in every one of these presentations, when we do a presentation for a company, the first place that people kind of go is, my spouse is
high whatever. Yeah.
Or my child is a high whatever. And it is, we started the conversation, it helps you win in your professional fire, right? Like 85% of your professional success is based on human skills.
Yeah.
I mean, far and away, anything above an individual contributor role, once you get into a management and an executive position, it is really about your ability to navigate the world of humans. Great tool for that. But it's also really, really helpful at home as you think about what kind of environment have you created for your spouse and for your children, because each one of them have a personality profile, and you lead a D differently than you lead an S, or than you lead an I, or you lead a C, right? So love is total knowledge of a person and then total acceptance of that person. That's a really good definition of love. And I would argue that the DISC helps me love people better. Because when I know them better and I can accept them for who they are, but also not expect them to be who they're not, then I can help people in my company. I can design job roles for them that are good fits and don't make their lives miserable.
Yeah. So give me an example of how you were able to love a family member better because of the DISC and just being able to understand them.
Yeah. So my wife is a high S. I mean, and the gift of an S is they will put their head down and do the work. They are steady as the day is long. They work hard. They're super loyal. They don't like instability. Early in our marriage, so I'm more of a D personality type. I like risk. I like to make quick decisions. I don't really worry about instability very much. But early in our marriage, I was really frustrated that my wife wanted to spend all of our money on insurance. She wanted insurance for everything. And I was like, what's going to happen? I did not want insurance. I wanted that access to that money to be able to spend on a new venture or to, go do something. So at a high level, it has allowed us to laugh a lot and at how we're wired. and for me to be kinder to her and make some concessions and get more insurance than I would, because I understand it means more to her than it means to me. But conversely, she has allowed me a lot of opportunity to go out and pursue professional ventures that are a little riskier, because she knows it's part of how I'm wired. So that at a high level, that's been really important. As I've gotten deeper into the disc, and we've gotten older in our marriage, you go through some life challenges. Allison's dad passed away a couple of years ago, and he was a phenomenal guy, and a very, very integral part in Allison's life. And as he was passing away he had Alzheimer's and was on the decline, I remember that having a conversation with her and thinking, man, she's handling this really, really well. I mean, and then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. I was like, oh, she's a high S. That means
not showing it.
She's not showing the emotion. It's not that she's not feeling it. It's that she's not showing it. And because of that insight, I was able to, hey, let me put the kids to bed tonight. We need to unpack. We need to talk about your dad. Like, we need to, and it was cathartic for her. It was an opportunity for her to really think and process, because she wasn't going to let that out. And I still to this day have to remember to make room for her to feel really safe and to feel really protected, so that she will show and share her emotions. It has absolutely impacted how I treat my spouse and how I raise my kids.
For me personally, and then what I kind of see of other marriages is that sometimes if our spouse is, most of the time, your spouse is different than you on the disc, but maybe the whole opposites attract is accurate. But I've had to like fight against this, and then I've seen other people like, oh, my spouse is just different than me, and that I don't understand that. But it's like, do you value your the health of your marriage? If you really want a good marriage, if you value your marriage, why not take a tool like the disc to understand your spouse? If you're like, even if you've never heard of the disc, you can know that we're different. Like, me and my spouse are different. But that's something that I had when I heard about the disc, and I read some good books, and I was just like, man, if I value my marriage, why would I not take these tools and try to apply them rather than just being frustrated? My wife's a high I, and so I have to make time, and I'm a high S. So I have to make time and make sure that I'm asking her about her day, because she wants to tell me everything, every detail. And so I have to choose what's important to her is relationships. She wants to feel like she and I know everything about each other to make sure that our relationship is strong. So if I value my marriage, then I make what's important to her important to me. And just like you may have felt like your original reaction with Allison was, man, she's handling this great. And you might have had a little bit of like, okay, well, let's move on. But
I don't have to dig into that one. Yeah.
Right. But then you're like, no, there's a lot more here, and I understand why. I'm not seeing it. So it's like, why not take a tool like this to help you make your marriage better?
Yeah, the marriage promise is really interesting, because at the core, what we're promising to do is to honor them, and to love and to cherish them. So to love, like to fully understand them, to cherish, to hold them up, and to put them above other things. But I like the word honor. Like, the way that you honor someone is to care about what they care about, right? To make what's important to them important to you, right? And so whether that's they care about having the sink, all the dishes in the sink be clean, I can honor my wife because she cares about that. I don't particularly care about it, but she does.
Yeah.
Right? Like, for, like, women can honor their husbands in ways, like, guys might have a desire for a higher frequency of intimacy than well, we can honor each other by making important or recognizing what's important to you and making that important to me.
Yes.
And the disc allows me to honor people because if I understand what's important to them, then I can make that important to me.
That's great. Let's go into kids. So I don't
Yeah.
have kids yet, but you do. So tell us about how you use the disc to be a better father.
For sure. Yeah, so I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son now. And let me tell you, personality profiles are not hereditary. Just because you and your wife are one way does not mean that, like, if you guys both have blue eyes, your kid's going to have blue eyes. But if just because you're both high D's or high I's does not have anything to do with how they're going to come out of the cooker. Everyone gets their own personality profile. So my daughter is a pretty high S. And what that means is that she doesn't really like change. Like when she was, and I noticed this, when she was a little girl, we had a car and we told her that we were going to sell the car. And she was in tears for days. Like she was like, oh no, we're going to sell this car that's been a part of my life my whole 6 years. Like, what? It's a car, but for her, like,
it was massive change.
Yeah, it was big change. Like, this is my favorite seat.
Yeah.
Like, I know how things work in this car. And what if we get a new car and I don't like it? Like, that's just the world that she, that meant something more to her.
Yeah.
And it's not kind to discount that.
Yeah, the stability that she knew
was
like,
going away.
I don't know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So S's really like to have plenty of time to process and think about future change. So my wife and I work really hard to make sure that, like, we're in the process of building a house right now, and we are actively engaging my daughter especially in that process so that she has buy-in and so she has input about this change that's about to happen. And you don't ever want to push an S into a corner and force them to make a decision, or they can get pretty belligerent. You want to give them time to make that decision of their own. My son is a high D, and one of the things with a high D is that they do not like to be controlled. They do not want someone else telling them what to do. They always want to feel like they get to choose. And this is important because I'm also a high D, and one of the things I'm committed to is for my son and I to have an incredible relationship. And because I'm aware of the disc, I am not going to allow my high need for control and his high need for control to wreck how we communicate and how we get along. Like,
so clarifying question. So a high D doesn't want to be controlled.
Correct.
And they also want to control.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. They want to be in charge.
Yeah.
They have a high need to be in charge.
I'm a high S, and I also don't like being controlled, or like you said, put in a corner, like make a decision right now. But I don't have a need to control others.
That's right.
Or a want to control others. So okay, I see that difference in S's and
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction. But one of the things when you're leading a D, you try not to tell them what to do. You try to give them options and let them choose. So if even when he was young, 5 and 6, if I said, go to bed, it's your bedtime. Yeah, like you can imagine the hell you say.
I'm staying up all night now.
Yeah, he just told me to go to bed, and I'm going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah.
And he's always been a really good kid, but he likes. I can see the smile come on his face when I ask him what he wants to do. So if I say, "Hey, buddy, tonight when you're going to bed, what do you want to do first? Do you want to brush your teeth first, or do you want to wash your hands and face first? Well, tonight I'm gonna brush my teeth first. Okay, you're in charge,
Great
man.
choice.
Great choice. Okay, do you want to read what? Do you want to read a story, or do you want to, like, what do you want to do? Like, at the end of the day, we're moving him in the same direction, but we're providing him with the sense of control and autonomy.
Because you have an understanding about what drives him or what causes him to balk.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I'm doing is there is going to come a day where positionally I'm his dad, and he will likely perceive that I'm trying to control him. Like, I'm working real hard to make that not the case. But I need for him to have other men in his life that he can trust and seek wise counsel from that aren't his dad. And so I'm intentionally trying to build those other adult male relationships into his life so that he is never without
Another man to talk to.
sound advice, because a D will make decisions quickly. And maybe you don't want that face tattoo. Maybe you should consult with some other people who
I love that story from your mom with you of like, I don't know anything. I'm just your mom. Why don't you go talk to the older men at church about whether you should get that face tattoo or not?
Yeah, no, that's
a great story.
Yeah, that's probably a good example of when I was 18, I walked in and I told my mom, I'm getting a tattoo. And I was kind of waiting for her to respond and say, no, you're not.
So that you could say, yes, I am.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I think if she had said, oh, no, you're not, I think I would
have gotten it.
I think I'd have a tattoo somewhere that she didn't want me to have a tattoo. Because that's how I was kind of wired, like, is some of the gift and the challenge of a high D is their ability to say, oh, the hell you say, and I will prove you wrong. You tell a high D that they can't do you can't start a business, or you can't, I'll show you, and they'll just work until
it's there.
To the detriment of all other things.
So happy that your mom was emotionally intelligent.
Oh man, she read me like a book.
Yeah.
So her response really was, well, I guess you're 18 now, and you can do that if you want. And it was kind of like, I was like, oh,
that's not what I was. That's not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, and she said, but this is something that's permanent for your life. And so my recommendation, what do I know? I'm just your mom. I'm a woman, not a young man. But my recommendation is that you go find 5 men that you respect that are, 2 decades down the road from who you would want to look at and be like in 2 decades, and go ask them,
should I get
what's
tattoo?
their advice? Yeah. And it was so disarming. Like, it was like I already knew what those guys were going to say. Like,
you didn't go ask them, did you?
I didn't even go ask them because I knew what they were going to say.
Yeah.
But that was, and whether my mom had the language for the disc or not, she was reading, she was emotionally intelligent enough to know that Alan's personality type is, if you tell him he can't, he's probably going to go. And so you have to use a different leadership style to lead the high D in the direction you want them to go. You can still get them to go where you want them to go, but it usually is not through confrontation and force.
Where is the line drawn specifically with your kids of understanding them and adapting the way that you lead them in that way, but also not creating this, the world revolves around you. Like, I I'm not articulating it well, but like you don't want to communicate
You
to
don't want
Cecil
to pander to your children.
that you can always do whatever you want, to where then I think that you like start sliding into like maybe not being a very good father because you just like everything revolves around you and I'll just give you whatever you want. So where's that?
Yeah. I think it has to do with style versus outcome. So so at the end of the day, leadership is about influence. It's about getting someone to do something that they would not have otherwise done. And you can lead people in all sorts of ways. You can lead. I can lead my son to do something that if I was concerned that he had a behavior that was not healthy, one of the ways I could try to influence him is directly through me. Another thing I could do, though, to lead him is, to call you and say, hey, Jeff, my son has behavior A that I'm concerned about. Would you and him go have lunch?
Yeah.
And you just ask him how he's doing? I never spoke to him, but I am influencing him through other people who can influence him. And so at the end of the day, the outcome is what matters. And leadership, you have to be cunning, you have to be intentional, but sometimes your words are not the greatest form of influence. So I would say the DISC allows you to alter your style or the way that something gets communicated, but it should not alter your standards. So it allows you to alter your style. It should not cause you to alter your standards.
Right.
The DISC is really just how we're wired to handle conflict, or how we're at challenges, or how we're wired to interact with other people. But it doesn't show education, formal education level, emotional intelligence level, any kind of moral, spiritual training. Like all of the disciples had a DISC profile. It's really actually pretty interesting.
Once you understand it, you can read the Bible and see it.
Oh man, so if you read the book of Matthew, the beginning of the book of Matthew is the entire genealogy of Jesus. I mean, all
data.
All of the facts. And what was Matthew was a tax collector, right? He was good with numbers. He was good with data.
Without a doubt, he was a high C.
He was a high C. He wanted all the facts. He wanted all the data. You can see it in the way that he wrote. Whereas James and John, what was their nickname?
Sons of Thunder.
The Sons of Thunder. These guys were like ready to like go to war for Jesus. I mean, action, quick response, anger is their primary emotion. And Jesus kind of laughingly gives them these nicknames of James and John, Sons of Thunder. Absolutely, they're high D's, right? So you can once you get into this, you can even start to see how the different personalities profiles show up in historical figures. Adolf Hitler had a personality profile. Mother Teresa had a personality profile. Donald Trump has a personality profile. Joe Biden has a personality. And so one of the things that makes it super important is that as parents, that we're really intentional about the moral overlay for each one of for any of the personality profiles, but we just have to be intentional that we teach the lessons that they need to be taught. We hold the standards, but that we present them in a style that's relevant to their personality profile.
So without a doubt, the DISC is a tool that helps us in the professional fire and definitely the people fire. So if a listener wanted to take the DISC, how could they do that through LEAD?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. So if a listener is interested in taking a disc profile, generally we will do these in conjunction with a business engagement, a part of a larger team. But if you're an individual and you think that this tool would be useful, email us at admin@leadadvisors.org and just say interested in some information about the disc, and we'll get back to you on what that looks like. And we can set up a way for you to take that individually. If you're interested in having your team at work or your entire family do this, it's a great tool for extended families. Again, reach out to us and we'll find a way to get you this tool in your hand. But it really is a game changer. It helps me to lead better, to love better, to be kinder to the people who I'm been granted stewardship over, and I think that's an important part of how I want to lead.
That's great. So guys, go check out the DISC personality profile, and we appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Four Fires Podcast.